Welcome to ELN. I'm your host, Austin Tribble. I'm here with Elizabeth Drolette, and this is Take 10. Elizabeth is an entrepreneur who recently just moved back to Glenwood Springs. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional career.
So I am a creative content director for a company that I founded called Story Whisperer Productions. And basically what I do is I help brands find their story and then develop a content strategy to tell that story, whether that is podcasting, social video, blog, newsletter, etc.
How do you do that?
How do I do that?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Well, I've got a lot of experience in chasing stories, and that dates back to getting a broadcast journalism degree, going from TV to both in front of and behind, to then going into radio, and then finding myself at the edge of new media, chasing storytelling, an adventurous heart, ending up in Italy, and finding myself as an entrepreneur as a means of to an end of going to go live in Italy and working remotely, and then going to live in Seattle for 2 years and finding myself surprisingly right back here in this chair.
So Seattle, a lot happened there. You were there at probably the worst time you could possibly be there. So Elizabeth, were you working in downtown, and what was it like when mob rule took over?
So at the time, no, because like we were in shelter in place, and that was when you CHOP and all of that stuff, and so nobody was really moving, right? But at the beginning of this, yes, I was going downtown and getting to experience that. This all went from like that music festival feeling to then this just what you would imagine with 6 blocks of unoccupied area. So what it looked like was graffiti everywhere, and it looked like a homeless encampment. That's what it looked like. 6 blocks of a homeless encampment in this historically booming touristy attraction of Seattle that now there's garbage and there's people because none of this is regulated. It's an unoccupied zone, and it started out as Chaz, but then they turned it to CHOP because they wanted some of the perks of being a part of the United States. But you're seeing, imagine at the front of the encampment, it was, you are now leaving the United States. And that was the attitude. And there was people with guns that were the security guards of the of the CHOP zone that were minding the gates. And so there's something very sinister. This isn't a music festival. This isn't this innocent farmer's market. These are people with guns that we have no idea who they are and who have they been appointed by, right? And with anything, power rises to the top. Somebody will collectively seize power.
With no rule of law, nobody enforcing protection. Did people get harmed? Did people get injured?
Yeah, so there was 4 shootings total. There was mornings where citizens were cleaning blood off the streets from the night before. And in addition to that, because police have to go before, if there's a gun shooting, police have to go first, and then first responders. So first responders were not allowed in to take care of these people that had been shot. And you have to keep that in mind because it's such a pivotal story of what's happening here, because we have these innocent residents who are and business owners who are just trying to make a living. It's COVID. They've been hurt. People have been all hurt in their own ways. And businesses haven't been able to open, and we're just finally at phase 2. So we're finally getting able to open, and now they can't because they have to suddenly worry about riots, and there isn't police governing their streets.
What's interesting is I don't remember hearing any of those stories.
There's a lot of people out here.
Alex Bennett, a former nurse, says she was walking her dog nearby when she saw one of the victims.
And I saw one gunshot wound on his arm, so I took off my sweatshirt and tied it around his arm above where the gunshot wound was so I could make a tourniquet to try to keep the bleeding down.
Bennett says she heard somebody say they called 911, but were told paramedics won't come because police were being blocked from entering.
And so many times, many of my friends said, how come I'm not hearing about this from Seattle? And I said, I don't know. I don't know why you're not hearing about this. It's the biggest outrage in my...
Why weren't we hearing it? In your opinion?
In my opinion, because it's political. Truth was political. And I think that there was the greatest account of what... It seemed people were very divisive of what they saw in that chop zone, right? It was either you saw this way or that way. And depending on how you saw that situation, you were then deemed as leaning like pro-Trump, anti-Trump, and that seemed to be the bottom line. And it made me had to like and then ask myself at what level of that hatred, what were people willing to do? And so were they willing to turn a blind eye to such an atrocious situation in order to have...
Yeah. To report that kind of stuff would be harming their movement.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't say anything.
Yep.
And so that's where you get these people wiping off blood with paper towels and whatever.
Well, and you have to
had.
understand, the week before, people were glorifying this, right? People were saying this is a beautiful moment of social justice. We've got this. What would this world? We're reimagining the future of
society, or human history is the future of the human race, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like going from feeling the collective togetherness in a time you really need to feel like you were part of something bigger, and being like, man, I'm on the right side of the fence here. I'm fighting for social justice. I'm fighting for equality. And then to see a week later, blood on the streets, 2 black kids have died. Nobody's talking about them because it's black on black crime, and it was at the heart and center of a place that the mayor explicitly said over and over again on camera that it was a safe summer of love, and calling out every young person to come. And so what do you do when suddenly your team doesn't seem to be winning, right? And like, are you going to then go and then say, I've changed my mind? Or are you going to look away? And
I heard some arguments about, well, people are hurt, we need to let the paramedics transport them. And I heard, again, loud calls and chants to stand ground, to not let anybody in the chop.
Mary Ellen Donnelly lives across the street and heard the gunshots and watched the scene evolve. She has begged the lawmakers to intervene for everyone's safety.
We need help. We need help. I mean, we live here.
I feel like it'd be an interesting thought experiment just to remove race from it for a second. I know that's where this whole thing originated. But you remove that, and what is the picture? What do you see?
You see hatred. And there's this wonderful movie or documentary, it's 13 minutes long, and it's called Mob Rule Seattle. And it's a great depiction of what it was like during that time, and how this idea got hijacked. And somebody says, an interview, and it says, well, first we had like the first wave of people, and the BLM, and they seem legit, like they were fighting for their rights, and what they felt was personally something that they needed to advocate for, which is what all America is about, right? Mm-hmm. And then we had the second wave of people who were just wanting to disrupt the fundamentals of country, and just wanting to terrorize, and had their own agenda. And that was Antifa, and it was, the irony was so thick of them saying that they wanted anti-establishment, but then they were creating an establishment of their own and holding innocent residents hostage, and and creating a society of their own run by them. And somebody always takes power. There's never a situation where we just don't have someone in a role of power governing